Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
Have you registered for your COVID-19 digital vaccination certificate yet? Vincentians who received their COVID-19 vaccine in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are encouraged to apply for their vaccine certificate. If you are planning on traveling or planning to attend upcoming fully vaccinated events, here are 2 steps you can follow. Step 1. Send an email to vaccinecertificate@gov.bc with the following documents. 1. Your COVID-19 vaccination card. 2. Photo identification card. 3. Passport size photo. This is optional. Step 2. Be patient and allow for a maximum of 72 hours for the information to be forwarded to your email. Don't forget to check your spam or junk mail. For more information, call 784-451-2183 or the COVID-19 hotline 784-534-4325. Your health, a shared responsibility.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Profiles. On this edition, you'll meet a young lady who I'm sure is no stranger to you. When we come back from the break, you'll see who she is.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentians that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
I'm Shanika John, Chief Health Promotion Officer acting in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment. Since St. Vincent and the Grenadines started administering the COVID-19 vaccines, we've encouraged persons from different age group, different risk factors to get vaccinated. For those persons who have contracted the COVID-19 virus, vaccinated or unvaccinated, the severity and the impact of the virus is significantly different. If you've not yet considered getting the vaccine, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
looking at profiles, and on this edition, I have the pleasure of speaking to Ms. Shafia London, who is a business executive and a philanthropist. Shafia, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Profiles.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.
I know you have a very busy schedule. You're not even based here, so it is fortuitous that I can grab you to do this recording, because I don't know when I'll see you again to have this opportunity. Shafia, let me start out first by asking you if you were going to put yourself up on a dating site, how would you describe yourself?
Wow.
To that person who is wanting to pursue somebody of quality as you may want to reflect yourself.
Great introduction. Let's see. I would probably say dynamic, extroverted introvert who works really hard. I would say I'm a mom of two. I guess I can't say I'm married on the dating side.
Well, let's just suppose you can. Let's just suppose you can.
Certainly, I'll say I'm happily married, a family-oriented businesswoman who likes to give back to the community.
And that is succinctly what you are, and we're going to expand on that in this version of the program. Now, you brought out some character traits that I want to drill down a bit. Introverted, extroverted, or extroverted / introverted. That's interesting, because I thought you were either one or the other. How do you see yourself being both?
I believe life is not black and white. There are many hues to it. And so as the moment dictates, you can be one or the other, or you can be a combination of both. So I say extroverted because most persons would probably describe me as fairly confident, fairly outspoken, and quite outgoing sometimes. So I like to have a good time in my relaxing moments. But introverted because I think a lot. I spend a lot of time alone, and I enjoy the solitude of being able to come up with ideas and being able to think about what is happening around me and with my life and how to put the pieces together. I spend a lot of time doing that.
So let's talk about some of that alone time, because it's not a secret that you have excelled and excelled within a relatively short space of time, because you're young and you hold a very top position in the company that you work for, and it's a big company. And I believe a lot of that alone time may have a significant part to play in achieving that sort of thing. Tell me what really goes on in that alone time.
It's full introspection, but introspection not necessarily on a personal level, but introspection about work and our strategic plans and how things are going, how the paths are moving, what the future should look like, what the past has looked like, what can we learn about it. So I spend a lot of time just charting the way and thinking about the next big thing, or how do we as a business remain sustainable, and how do we ensure we remain relevant to our stakeholders so that we can be around for another 100 years.
And so that's a business part. And what about Shafia getting on in terms of her career path or her milestones that she wants to achieve? Would you say that you're a planner?
Definitely. I a very long time ago, I saw this quote that says, success is 90% planning and 10% execution. And I think I live that every day. With a great plan, execution becomes quite easy because you cover all your bases, you understand the risk, the opportunities, and you prepare for them accordingly. You understand what resources you need to execute. Right. And so I spend a lot of time planning, not just for business, but for my own life. I plan what I want to do next, how I want to get there. And I have been doing this for a very long time, since childhood.
As long as childhood?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
So you've been writing what I call a strategic plan for your life, I suppose, at different intervals. You pick it up, you dust it off, you examine it. Is that what goes on in the alone time still?
Definitely, that hasn't changed. I've been doing this since I was 7 or 8 thereabouts, and it hasn't changed. Every year, I am one of those resolution people at Christmas. I sit and write the plan for the year, write the plan for the next 3, 5 years, review what you have accomplished from the previous plan, and I would have a planner for the year. And at the beginning of that planner, I would list what those resolutions are so that every Monday morning or on weekends, I take a look, I glimpse at it. Most times I don't achieve half of it, but at least it gives me direction in my life and it makes me feel a sense of accomplishment when I'm able to tick it off and say, I have done this. Yes.
Planners tend to be perfectionists, you know, and meticulous planners tend to be even more so that way. And maybe you're hard on yourself, I don't know. I'm asking you actually, are you hard on yourself? Are you a perfectionist? Are you very disappointed when one of those goals that you set out to meet is not achieved?
I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist because I believe perfection could actually be the enemy of the better good sometimes. What I do know is you need to have direction and you need to have some milestone and a goal for everything. And once I'm able to satisfactorily say, I have done as much as I could to achieve this goal in the circumstances, I feel the same sense of satisfaction as if I had done it. I don't like to fail, and I'm not a good loser. Probably why I'm not in sports. I get very emotional when I lose or if I feel as though I'm failing at anything. However, as I mature, I've come to grips with trying again, and I've come to grips that maybe it was not for you. For example, I've been trying to learn Spanish for the last 10 years, and every year by the end of this year, I will be fluent in Spanish. I can't say I'm fluent in Spanish 10 years later.
So that's one of the goals that's eluding you.
Yes.
But I would think that in the main, you managed to achieve most of what you write down in that your life's strategic plan. Let's talk about leadership, Shafia. You are a leader. How long has this trait resided in you?
If you were to ask my family and friends, they would say forever. Because I guess whenever I'm in an environment and I feel like better could be done, or we could be more efficient at what we're doing, as simple as playing, I take charge. Or at least I try to support the leader, whoever is the assigned leader if it wasn't me.
Right.
But most environments, I guess, I always want to see the best of whatever we are doing. So I tend to step forward. And oftentimes I find people tend to step backward, but I tend to step forward. And so a lot of time I find I naturally fall into those
I was going to
seats.
ask that. Is it just a natural emergence, within a group dynamic? People naturally give way to what they see as the obvious person to lead them. Has that been your experience?
I think so. Even when I'm quiet, even when I'm reserved, it tends to happen naturally. And so as long as I feel I have the capability for whatever is that particular moment, I will accept or I will move forward with it. If I think that I'm not capable, I would oftentimes say I would support as much as I could the person who is probably more capable than I am in that circumstance.
Tell me what happens when you don't get your own way. Because I'm trying to figure out the sort of leader that you are. And there are many types. Some effective, some are just not effective. They find themselves in a position of leadership, but they're not necessarily effective leaders. What happens when Shafia does not get what she wants? Even professionally, in terms of on the job, or in your personal life?
So there's this concept of being competitive. And most people see that as being competitive with someone else. I'm very competitive with myself. And so if there is something to be done and I don't get what I thought I wanted, I try again. and I keep trying until I get it. Sometimes I would fail or I would need to change direction, but believe you me, I am going to get to the end point someday.
So
I might just change my strategy of how I get there.
You're fiercely determined.
Yes.
Well, Shafia, we've really touched on some significant character traits in the first 10 or so minutes, 12 or so minutes of this program, and it has brought us to the end of the first break. I asked you to come here to share 4 pieces of music with my audience. I want to hear the first one and why it is that this one you've chosen means something to you.
Okay. Well, I chose Chances by Bob Marley. Bob Marley is one of my favorite singers and many persons in the world. But Chances is one of his fairly unknown songs.
Okay.
And the first time I heard it, I immediately connected with this song. It speaks about the fact that life is filled with possibilities. And as long as you have the right mindset, the right capability and confidence, chances are you can do anything.
And it is no chance that we're going to the break, and hopefully, by good chance, we come back to do the second segment. Let's go out with Chances by Bob Marley.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
I got my COVID-19 vaccine and my booster shot to ensure that I am protected. I've never been tested positive for COVID-19, and even if I did contract the virus, I've never been sick. And I am confident that the COVID-19 vaccine significantly contributed to that. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they're one of the ways that we can navigate this pandemic together. If you've not yet considered vaccination or getting your booster shot, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
This is Profiles, and I am chatting with philanthropist and business executive Ms. Shafia London. Shafia, we are moving straight into the second segment of the program, and I want to see if in this segment I can find out a bit about your early upbringing. I know you were born, I think, in the village of Dixon, which is, I call it Georgetown, but
Yes.
it's Dixon, right? And tell me how that happened to, or how did it shape who Shafia is today?
Yes. I would say it is the basis of my foundation. I grew up in a rural community, Dixon, which is from George, which is most people, as you did, describe it as Georgetown.
Right.
But it was good old community life. Grew up with grandparents, extended family life, an abundance of love, an abundance of activities, an abundance of just knowing who you are and knowing that no matter what, you are loved.
Was the cohesiveness, which is what I think you're talking about here, of the people in the village? And I have to say, it's not dissimilar to what other small communities were like. Maybe they still are like that. You know, that cohesive nature of the way people got along. How has that impacted you now in this fast-paced corporate life where things are changing right before your very eyes? People who you develop relationships are no longer because the job that they're doing, they've either moved on for a bigger opportunity or it has moved them on.
Yeah.
How are you relating both of those things?
Well, for one, it creates a space for me where I can always go back to and call home. So even in a busy life, I know I can stop, jump on a plane, go to Dixon and have a relaxing moment and reset.
So you still see it as a sanctuary, yeah?
It is a sanctuary for sure. But more so, the fundamentals that were instilled in me, from there, I take it with me everywhere I go. I know to respect everyone. So no matter what, I try to respect everyone, no matter, gender, color, social status. I show respect. It also has taught me that you always have to try to help your fellow men, because in Dixon, and like you said, most of the communities, you couldn't go hungry. Most people probably didn't have formal jobs, formal education, but they were very happy and people shared. And so I always have this sense of obligation to share, and that came from Dixon.
So that is the philanthropic side of you.
Certainly.
It was a value that was drilled in from early. You're saying that the village or the community you live in certainly influenced your value system. And if you were to single out a particular value that you hold very dear to your heart, you adhere to, you are unyielding with it, it's your core principle, what would that be, Shafia?
Family first. Family first. And for me, family is not just blood. Family includes the people who have shown you love and who you love. And I believe that no matter what, you should always remember your family. Take time out to say hello, to call, to message. You might be busy, but you have to remember at the end of it, your job will go away. You can get sick. The people who you work with, they're not the ones who will show up at your hospital bed. In those last moments, a lot of persons have said that they wish they had spent more time with family. And whenever I feel like I'm not doing that sufficiently, I have this deep guilt that drives through my body. And so I need to always stop and try again and ensure that family and friends, as I said, meaning those who've become family, they come first.
Let's talk about the actual family itself, your flesh and blood, and more so the people in your household. You have a corporate position which demands a lot of your time, and I believe with this family value that you have, there must be conflict in terms of internal conflict. I'm talking about corporate, family. How do you resolve that?
Well, my boss calls me the octopus because that's in recognition of how I'm able to balance all of these things. And to be truthful, sometimes I drop some things, but you just pick it up and try again. So I just try to carve out sacrosanct time with my family. Every single day, I ensure I cook dinner for my husband and my children.
Wow.
And if we can't at least take responsibility to order something that they would enjoy, we try to watch movies on a Friday night and eat popcorn.
Okay.
So there are these, I've ring-fenced particular times in my days that belongs exclusively to my family.
So that is, I guess, not a very difficult thing for you to do, given the sort of the early seeds that were planted in the village of Dixon. Now, tell me about your parents. Your father, I know, was E.G. Lynch, and E.G. certainly was not an unknown name in St. Vincent. He had a very high profile and was, at the best of times, sometimes controversial.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that's the paternal side, and then there's your maternal side. You told me that you never really grew up with your mother. Let's start talking, before we get to E.G., let's start talking about that part first.
Yes. So my mom and I, we are very close right now. She's a very good friend. She's more than a mother, and she buys the best shoes for me. I have an obsession with shoes. But that didn't happen overnight. That took a lot of conflict resolution, and it took a lot of maturity for me to get there. And that's because a lot of persons, just like me, I'm not the only one. Your parents go overseas to explore a better life for themselves and for their children, because opportunities were quite limited, especially in the 70s and 80s. And she was one of them. But she was very young when she did that. And so as I get more mature, I now appreciate that part of her leaving was not just to get a better life, but there was also youth involved, and that would have influenced some of the decisions. Okay. And so I've come to accept that, and I now work. I've worked on that for a while, and we're in a much better place. I love my mom; she's really adorable. But as a child, it obviously created a lot of challenges for me. And I believe for a lot of persons as well who grew up in that similar environment, it is the source of a lot of adult trauma that you experience, because you never fully resolve that void.
How were you able to? Because as you have identified it, there are people who are listening to you, as you've correctly said, have had that as their reality. You have overcome that. You're in a good space. We don't have the whole afternoon, but just briefly, how or what are some of the things that you had to consciously do to get that resolution?
I remember as a teenager being very angry and feeling like, why would a mother leave her child? And it was one person saying something to me that changed me completely and my attitude towards it. And it's someone, her name is Patrice Reddock. She's now deceased. Yes. Closest person to a queen I would ever meet. And I lived with Patrice for a short while, and she recognized I was angry at my mom, because I would write these very angry letters as a child to my mom. And she said to me, have you ever thought of this from your mother's side? And I asked her, what do you mean by that? And she said, think about your mom at her age, having a child with no opportunities, and this opportunity comes to her to go overseas and have a better life and be able to support you financially. She had to make a decision. Have you ever thought about that? And she said, I had to make that same choice. And my children are still angry with me. And I have an opportunity to explain it to you, so that hopefully you don't remain angry with your mother. And the moment she said that, it took me to a deep reflective state when I started to see, I become a little bit more empathetic towards women who face that scenario. And from then on, I made it my business to build a closer bond with my mom without the anger.
So Patrice was able to neutralize you, as it were.
Yes,
and that is, I suppose, the importance of mentors.
Yes.
And stabilizing people in your life. Time is running on. I want to bring up just one more point before we go to the break, and we're still going to be on the thing of family. You mentioned Patrice. Who are the other mentors, rocks, pillars in your life?
I don't know if we want to open that, Tony. The time might run out. It started from very young. I mean,
Go for it.
Gavin Seymour as principal, who ensured that I didn't go to school in my village, but in another village where he taught, and it was a few miles of walking every day, but he saw something and he wanted to mold it. You know, my teachers like Melanie Bino, then going off, my aunts, Jacinth, Margaret, Marcy, they've all been like mothers to me. I mentioned Patrice Reddock. As an adult, I have Lennox Bowman. He is still, I would say, if I were to pick the mentor of my mentors, he is the one. Lennox Bowman is always that person I can call, and he's so wise and so balanced. And I could never be upset after a conversation with him.
He's like oil on water,
yes,
right?
he opens all the perspectives and he allows me to really think deeper. And then, you know, in college, Nigel Scott. And so I have a lot of persons who have been great influences. And I want to emphasize here, Tony, the importance of teachers. And encourage teachers to continue to be guiding lights in your children's lives because children go through a lot.
Students.
Yes, they're students' lives. They go through a lot at home, and teachers become that person, that safe space. And so I want to recognize and thank teachers all around for that, and encourage those who have chosen that profession to just do more than teach. Just listen and make sure you are a person who a student could rely on.
And I suppose that's why they say professions like that are noble ones.
Yes.
Shafia, let's hear your second piece of music. Tell me what it is. Tell me why.
So my second, I mentioned to you that I've been trying to learn Spanish forever. And I've tried every app there is. And so I started listening to Spanish music to help me to learn the language. And one particular song has stuck with me forever. It's called Vivir Mi Vida by Mark Anthony. And it speaks again about life, but it also says to live your life because you only have one. And so if you have one life, you should maximize it to its fullest potential. Do all that you need to do. If you're hurt, forgive, move on, and just live life. And so Vivir Mi Vida by Mark Anthony is that second piece.
And let's go to the break with Mark Anthony, Shafia's Choice.
I'm Shanika John, Chief Health Promotion Officer acting in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment. Since St. Vincent and the Grenadines started administering the COVID-19 vaccines, we've encouraged persons from different age group, different risk factors to get vaccinated. For those persons who have contracted the COVID-19 virus, vaccinated or unvaccinated, the severity and the impact of the virus is significantly different. If you've not yet considered getting the vaccine, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
This is Profiles, and my guest is Ms. Shafia London. She is a business executive, corporate manager, and I think the titles that she has acquired in the corporate life are numerous. And she'll also want to be known fondly as a philanthropist. She's my guest, and I'm going to continue chatting with her. Shafia, let's talk about E.G. Lynch.
My dad, the great E.G.
The great E.G. What sort of relationship you had with him?
I was strained in most instances, but I had great respect and adoration for him. I thought of him as being quite intelligent. I think he's the most intelligent person I've ever met, actually. And it's not academic intelligence. He has this wit about him. He understood the way of the world, and his thought processes were just amazing. So I thought he was super intelligent, and also he's very industrious. My father was always up to something,
Right.
and he was well loved by the community. He's a man who, as you know, when he spoke, people listened and people trusted his word. And
Infectious voice and laugh as
and
well.
he loved to laugh. My second son has gained that smile, that laughter, and every time I see my son, I'm like, oh, look, my dad. But he's been a great force to be reckoned with in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm very proud of him for that.
You, in my chat with you before, during this interview, you spoke about wanting to complete a journey which you never got to complete with your dad. That is bringing the relationship to a point or to a place where it felt complete. You get to talk a bit about that. Tell me, what were the gaps, and also explain to me and the viewers why E.G.'s passing was, as you described it in my conversation with you, arguably the most painful time of your life.
Yes. Fathers are an important part of anyone's life. Fathers do what no mother can do. Good fathers, let me just qualify that.
Yes.
And I believe that one of the challenges of our small society is the absence of father figures. And I believe that for us to grow as a society and mature, we need to ensure that is fixed. In the past, men would have a lot of children, different households, and never really anchored in any single place. And even if they were anchored, they had many outside children. And those children tend to suffer because you never truly get to appreciate the presence and the nurturing of a dad, that firm figure, that trust, that hero. And so I didn't have that with my dad growing up. He was present, but there's a difference with just being there and actually being there.
I guess you're talking about the bond.
The bond didn't get to grow. He loved me, I knew that. And I really adored him. But we never got to spend a lot of time together as I would have liked. And I believe that is the case for many persons. And it creates a void. And as I mentioned with my mother, I had it on both sides, mother and father. With my mother, I was able to reconcile faster. And now I'm an adult, she's still around, and we get along. With my dad, I felt as though the hope was lost when he died. And so when he died, I cried like I've never cried before. And even now, I don't think I've ever cried that way.
Yes, yes.
Because you feel as though that opportunity is now lost to reconcile and to establish that relationship with someone who you know is very important to you.
Yeah.
Therefore, it was the most painful moment when he died. And it was also a moment where, at his funeral, as everybody knows, very controversial funeral,
Yes.
I was very upset because I felt as though persons were taking a moment away from me, which was already painful.
So they didn't understand the sensitivity of the moment, especially not living in your head and
Yes.
understanding what you were going through.
But even that I've come to reconcile with, because later on, you understand that he was well loved and he was their dad as well, or their friend, and so they were angry for whatever reasons. And so my father's loss was really a great one for me. But like everything else, you learn, you grow, and you heal.
Yes.
And though he's not around, as I mentioned, I respect what he has done. I respect that he was able to rebuild, I would say, a lot of his political party. I respect that he was so well spoken.
Yes.
And I'm proud of that I am from that person.
And so you should be. So let's talk a bit about your education. Were you an Ireland scholar?
Yes.
And you say that as just, some small achievement. I'm sure it's not. Take me through your academic passage, as it were. Again, we don't have the whole of time, but
Yes.
I think it's important for my viewers to know Shafia the academic.
I take my academic side very seriously. I've come to recognize that it opens a lot of doors. And it is the single, apart from God, it is the single most important factor in opening all the doors that are currently open to me right now. It was the driving factor. And so I started Langley Park Government School, country, girls' high school, did very well at girls' high school with the support of my aunt and my teachers. Went off to community college, did fairly well there. Went off to university in Trinidad, then to England.
Right.
And since then, I try to at least do a course every now and then. And I recently completed my MBA about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And that meant a lot to me because...
Your first degree is in what?
Science, in biochemistry.
Biochemistry.
Yes. I have a first degree in biochemistry with communication and human resource management. I believe when I graduated, the university said I was the first student to be across three faculties at the same time.
Right.
But I knew whatever you do, you have to be able to communicate well, and you also need to be able to manage people well. And therefore, I wanted to do communication and human resource management along with the science. And in England, I did biochemical engineering.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you ever been a teacher?
I tried. I'm a terrible teacher.
So you actually went into the teaching profession. You flirted with it.
I flirted with it, not with. I remember Mr. Scott because I guess persons of chemistry background very rare, and I was in entrepreneurship at the time. I had Villamar and the Bridge House,
Right.
and Mr. Scott, I believe it's Mr. Scott or someone, Dr. Warrican.
Right.
He reached out to me and said, I'm looking for a chemistry teacher for college. Could you come? Tony, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to apologize to those students. Teaching is hard. You have to, there's teaching in the day, but the preparation and the marking of papers. I remember one term the parents and everybody called in because I hadn't returned the papers for the students. I thought it takes a lot out of you. It's very demanding. And you have all of these different persons who are at different levels, and you have to break the material down. Tony, when I tell you I respect a profession.
So I know one thing that you're not going to write in your strategic plan very soon.
Is to be a teacher.
Is to be a teacher. Well, how have you found the solid foundation of your academic pursuits? How have you found that to be a success factor in your participation in corporate life?
What most people miss is they see academic or these degrees as something you earn and working as something you do, and that they're disconnected. I always try to apply what I learn, and Lennox Bowman is who taught me that, to my corporate world and how I manage. If I'm doing a course and I see new knowledge or a different way or a best practice, I try to use it in real life. And so my staff would often say, Miss London, you're doing a course. because they see me come with something different, and I try to share it with them. I'll go through all of the papers and I
Right.
explain why it's done this way, what is the research behind it, etc. And I find that that helps. That helps a lot when you could connect the two. Because learning helps you to grow, and it helps you to do things better than you were doing previously. Therefore, when you study and when you gain all these degrees, it's not just about saying I have a paper. It's about actually being able to utilize that information that you've gained and apply it to real life. When there's a disconnect, it's when you find your growth could become stunted.
The acquisition of knowledge, and some people acquire knowledge for the sake of acquiring knowledge's sake, and that's what we call trivia. But the acquisition of knowledge, you as an academic will tell me, is an ongoing process. It never ends. Okay? Apart from what you learn on the job with your interactions with, must be a wide network, how do you keep up with that acquisition? What are the things that you do?
Well, for one, I subscribe to a lot of different.
So you read?
Yes, I read a lot. I read a lot. I don't read as much as I should, but I at least try to read an article every day on world matters. So I read, like The Economist, etc. And I try to read at least one book every month. It should be like 3 or 4. And, there are persons who read a lot more than that, but I try to read at least. On my planner, that annual planner that I spoke about, you would always see read at least 12 books this year.
Is that so? One a month at least?
One a month, and I count them down. And when I get to 12, which is usually before the end of the year, I celebrate. Because it meant I've achieved one of those goals.
So reading, do you do a lot of social media, Shafia?
I used to. When I was much younger, well, not much younger, I used to, because it was a great place to connect. And when you've been studying across the globe, it keeps you in touch with family and friends all over. However, I've found that you have to balance it carefully. It could become very consuming, and it also has a very toxic underlying nature to it. Therefore, you have to be able to manage your time on social media and recognize that it's not always a true reflection of reality, what is happening on the ground. I therefore limit my time. I would try to be like on Facebook, for example, once a week and spend like an hour max, and then I'm gone. So people would message me in Facebook Messenger and they wouldn't get a response for a month. Because I just can't.
They think you're ignoring them.
No, it becomes too consuming, and it takes you away from what really matters, what is in front of you.
Yes.
But I spend a lot of time on my phone because it is the source of information and how I communicate with all the different stakeholders in my life. Social media, though, no, it's very regulated for me.
Let me ask you this final question in this segment before we get on to your next piece of music. As a high-profile person, and I'm basing my question on what I've heard other high-profile people say about social media, and I'm talking across the globe. They don't do a lot of it because of that toxic nature, but also because that toxicity often manifests itself in personal attacks on them as being a high-profile person. Has that been your experience?
Definitely. You might recall that I've written pieces, social commentaries, I would call them. I enjoy writing. And I used social media in the past to share my writings. Oftentimes, most of the comments are positive. However, what I've found is that rather than address the issues that I've raised, and let's start a healthy discussion about why you may or may not agree or disagree, persons tend to go very personal. And it just detracts from the real matter at hand. But it becomes personal in a very harmful way.
Yeah, destructive way.
In a very destructive. It's almost as though you're trying to malign the person's, my character, my past, make stories up, etc.
Cut you down.
cut you down. Now, I'm not afraid of that. And it doesn't matter to me ultimately because, as I mentioned, social media is not a true reflection of society, always. However, you're still human and you still feel this sense of, you feel bad. Let me just put it simple. You therefore have to spend a lot of time reminding yourself why you are who you are, why you are who you are, and recovering. And
Just,
I could
it's
really
that
do it now.
energy for
Yes,
self-evaluation. that
I
you-
really don't have time to be doing
Yes.
that every week or every day. I prefer, once a week, as I mentioned, I go, I interact with people, I share something that might be happening in my life, and, use social media positively. When it becomes negative, I do not engage.
Let's hear your third piece of music. Again, what is it and why?
We have spoken a lot, and one of the things I haven't mentioned is that I believe there are three parts to every person: your mind, your body, and your spirit. I'm extremely spiritual. I believe that there's a strong sense of spiritual life, and therefore this song, My Soul Says Yes, is a song that I connect with very deeply because it teaches me that I'm not always in control and there's a greater being to life than me. It may not be, to me, I call that being God. To others, they may call different names, different thoughts. But my soul says yes, says to me sometimes, I need to let God take charge and lead me and open up the paths for me.
And with that, let's go to the break with My Soul Says Yes.
My soul says yes, says yes.
Isn't it good to know that no matter where you are, you're covered? Covered by a company owned by Vincentions that understands your unique insurance needs. At Metrosint General Insurance Company, we've invested 50 years of service to guarantee that you have the peace of mind that you deserve. When it comes to motor vehicle, property, employer's liability, business insurance, and much more, we've got you covered. Our professional and friendly staff understands your needs and ensures you understand your options. Metrosint General Insurance Company.
I got my COVID-19 vaccine and my booster shot to ensure that I am protected. I've never been tested positive for COVID-19, and even if I did contract the virus, I've never been sick. And I'm confident that the COVID-19 vaccine significantly contributed to that. The vaccines are safe, they are effective, and they're one of the ways that we can navigate this pandemic together. If you've not yet considered vaccination or getting your booster shot, I encourage you to do so today. Get vaccinated.
My soul says yes.
You're looking at profiles. I'm into my final segment on this edition. My guest is Ms. Shafia London. She is a business executive and a philanthropist. Shafia, time flies. We're into our final segment. I know you say your soul says yes, and let's hope that can fuel the energy in this segment. Mr. Williams, Granville Williams?
Yes, Grenville.
Yeah, how did you meet him?
In a party.
Just like that, eh?
Yes, just like that.
How did he become your husband then? I mean, like really and truly, what was the thing that started to get this glue to work?
We didn't know each other. He knew of me, but I didn't know him. I've heard his name and so on. And he walked into the party. And as soon as I saw him, I don't know what about him, Tony, but I immediately said, I want one of him.
So if there were two of him there, you would have had a choice then.
Lucky for me, there's only one
There
of
was
him
only
in the
one.
world.
I see.
And it so happened that at the same party, he had told my best friend at the time that he wanted to meet Shafia London. And they made a bet. He said, I want to meet her and I'm going to marry her, without even
Is that
talking
so?
to me. Of course, she lost. She still reminds me that I made her lose her bet.
There you go.
But yes, that's how we met. And
Apart from that moment of serendipity, what are the sustainable traits that you both bring into this union that allows it to be solid? And I mean, I'm assuming it is, and one that seems to keep you in a happy place.
yes. My husband and I come from very similar backgrounds. And so we have that underlying connection. We understand each other. He is very intelligent. He is very kind. He will try to be mean to me because he says, I try to have my way too many times, but he's very kind. And he's also one who's very practical. If I go off on a tangent, he pulls me back.
Right.
If I go too much, like I told you earlier, I like to give. And sometimes I give too much. I think there's a too much. And he becomes that balance. He's a very balanced person. And so, we have found that by talking through things, by seeking help when we need to seek help,
Right.
we've been able to go through life's trials and tribulations and be in a place now where I know we are best friends. I know we are business partners.
Okay.
I know that no matter what happens in the future, he can count on me and I can count on him. And we've proven to each other that love is not always a perfect road.
Right.
It's not always a smooth one. And as long as there's hope, we should explore it. Hope that is not destructive, of course.
Yeah.
And I think we are mature enough to know if we've come to that place. But right now, we're in a good place. But Tony,
And it shows.
what holds me the most is he is the best father. I remember I told you my absence, of my lack of a father
Yes.
role initially. When I see the way he treats our sons and the way he carves out his time and he leaves work at 4 p.m. on the dot to pick up the sons, he is amazing. Every time I see the way he interacts with our sons, I know that the right decision was made.
And talking about your children, you brought forth in this union 2 sons. And how has that enriched your life, Shafia?
To no end. My sons are amazing. They very intelligent. I have two polar opposite sons. One is quite reserved, calculated, very intelligent as well. The other very spontaneous. I call him mini E.G. Lynch. Always busy, always trying to outsmart somebody, and always up to an adventure. He's brave and bold. And so watching the two of them grow and grow differently is an experience that I will not trade for anything in the world. Being a mother, I believe, is one of the greatest honor a woman can have, even if it's not your own child, but being a mother to a child.
Are you one of these parents that have this mission that your children must want for nothing? I mean, there are people who have appointed themselves as the all provider for their children, regardless and almost timelessly. Is that what you are?
This might be controversial, but no. Deprivation creates a sense of confidence, but also ambition.
But you're not gonna set it up so they're deprived, though.
Sometimes I may have to, if I feel that they're taking advantage or they do not appreciate what they have. Yes, I will withhold some things that I could give to them.
Right.
So I do believe in giving them a comfortable life.
Yes.
And I do believe that they shouldn't have to struggle for everything.
Right.
However, I have found from my research and from looking on at other people's lives that sometimes having too much could be a bad thing. Therefore, they need to learn to fight and learn to appreciate things. And that usually comes with earning it.
Right.
And not necessarily just getting it. My eldest son, we involve him in a lot of sports because we want him to become competitive.
Yeah.
We want him to know that to win, the joy of winning, but winning on your own merit and not because mommy and daddy opened the door for you.
Right.
So I believe parents have a role to play in ensuring that children appreciate and earn their keep sometimes.
Let's talk now about Shafia and the future. I'm going to ask you about politics. Your father was a political animal. Shafia, I think people look at you as one for the future. I've heard it said, this is the stuff that leaders are made of. What are your ambitions along that front? Would you want to be Prime Minister?
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind one day.
Okay.
With the right team and the right resources, I wouldn't mind one day. If I want to be it tomorrow, no. But certainly I'll maintain an open mind on it.
Yeah.
I say that because since I was a child, I used to say I want to be Prime Minister. But my Prime Minister of my country was Dixon.
You wanted to be Prime Minister of Dixon?
Dixon. And persons who were around me, both friends, professional colleagues, for whatever reason, they all say that. I don't see it most times. They all say it. And the more they say it, the more I guess I'm starting to believe that there might be some potential.
You're seeing sense in their narrative, eh?
Yes, but even if it's not Prime Minister, at least making a contribution nationally at that level to determine policy and determine the development of the country, I'll definitely be interested in something like that in the future.
So you do have some political ambitions. Well, certainly, as you've put it, you're not going to dismiss it at all.
I maintain an open mind to it. At this stage of my life, however, I need to prepare my future to ensure that financially I am independent and therefore my motives or at least my actions are not influenced in any way by my financial circumstances if I become a politician.
Yes.
And at the same time, whilst I believe I should ensure my children earn, I also want to make sure they are comfortable going forward and their struggles are not as arduous as mine might have been.
Yes.
And so I want to prepare a path for them. And so the corporate world allows me to do that and at the same time allows me to develop my skills further, meet people, be in a better place that when I decide it's time for me to contribute nationally, it has already been organized properly. Financially independent, have the right network, have the right resources to be able to truly add value and not just be a mouthpiece or a talk shop,
right,
which unfortunately in our paths sometimes happens.
In your corporate existence, you are pretty much at the top of your game. You've been recently given a top position with the company that you work for, I believe with regional oversight, or you have oversight responsibilities for a significant part of the region in which your company operates. Is there even further room for climbing within that sphere?
Sure, I work with the biggest beer company in the world, and our footprint is everywhere. If I wanted to move to Europe, we're number one. If I wanted to move to US, we're number one. We own Budweiser, we own Corona, we own the global brands.
Right.
And you know, everything we do, even if we are in the Caribbean, it is at a global, it is recognized globally. Therefore, let's say my band in the company is recognized globally. Therefore, I could move to different parts of the world and still maintain the respect based on where I'm in the company, not just your position, but your band.
So you certainly have a lot to eye or to keep within your sights as you advance yourself in your career.
I would say there are options. I've just started. I want to give it my best. I want to give it some time. There's no rush. I want to make sure I leave a good legacy for the business.
Yes.
That I put it on a path where persons can say, you know, Shafia did it this way. Shafia and her team were able to achieve certain goals.
Right.
I therefore want to spend time focused on that right now, ensuring that the future is bright for the businesses. However, as I mentioned, I'm a planner. So I always think forward. And this company gives me a lot of options for the future. And then there's the option to return and serve nationally. At the end of the day, I don't think I'm in the place to make that decision right now. I just want to enjoy this moment.
As a woman, and being in the metaphorical boardroom, as in corporate life, you are in many situations where I believe you encounter powerful men, right? How has that shaped your outlook on the gender issue when it comes to that so-called glass ceiling and corporate relationships in the sort of power broker sense in the gender context?
Gender equality is a hot topic globally. And I believe it's rightfully so. There have been years of wrong that needed to be undone, where women had more difficult time accessing opportunities in the workplace and growing in the workplace. If you ask me today, are we there yet? In some parts of the world, yes. In some parts, no. I just think we need to be careful, however, because I get the sense that men are becoming the sacrificial lamb sometimes. Right. Yes, men are still definitely pinnacles of the corporate world. There's still more CEOs than women. But at the same time, at the base, when you look and see what's happening, the wave that's coming, I'm a little bit fearful for men. Having two sons perhaps made me shift my process.
Your views,
yes, my views. So I'm worried a little bit that we are now having men on the sideline and women are taking over. And that's good because we have really been wronged over the years.
But you don't want to overcompensate.
But we need to be careful. It needs to become a space where no matter who you are, no matter your gender, you have the same opportunities and you have the same rewards to gain from being in a particular job.
So the idea of affirmative action, I'm using that term where it related to blacks in the US being given a sort of priority, if you want, for getting places in universities and so on. Let's use that in the context now of corporate world where you make an extra special effort to ensure that women are put into positions. You're saying that we have to be careful that we don't go overboard with that.
Yes, certainly, especially in the region. When you look at university graduates, I would say you're probably seeing 7 to every 3 men if you were to have 10 persons who graduate. And therefore, I'm very concerned what the future might look like when men become sacrificed for women, compensating for the years of wrong that was done to us. However, as women, we still have a long way to go in the corporate world. As women, how we operate. I mentioned these terms early in terms of our confidence. Women, it has become a woman's challenge. Women tend to be perceived as lacking confidence. But at the same time, men are perceived as having too much confidence.
But when women assert themselves, they're criticized for it because they're often looked at as not being ladylike. So there's a conflict there, Shafia.
There's no conflict. That is a societal maturity that we need to just overcome. As a woman, I've faced criticism for being aggressive, for being, very tough. I would say the same thing a man says, and the persons will respond quite differently. They will get very scared of me. Whereas with a man, they would just do it and appreciate that the man has a job to do.
So the societal paradigm needs to shift, because a confident woman is not an aggressive, overly aggressive person because of what your expectation of her is.
Exactly. It will shift. I'm very optimistic that it's going to shift. It is going to be shifted because, as I mentioned, there's a wave coming. All the graduates from university, the majority are women. So ultimately, women are going to be the leaders of our business spaces very soon.
Yes.
And so we either have to get with the program.
So that tidal wave is already formed, eh?
Yes.
Shafia, we're at the end, I'm going to ask you this very last question before I get to your final piece of music. If you were given the opportunity and the wherewithal and the power to change one significant thing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I'm speaking in the present, what will that be?
Jobs, economic empowerment. I feel as though we have a long way to go. When I compare us to other countries, I feel as though we have either drifted or we are a ways away from the direction that seems to be the most prosperous one. Unemployment in SVG is really high. We need to find ways of employing the mass, not just, we need some sort of economic activity that has spill-off economic activities that can drive us forward. A lot of persons are quite idle. And it's not their fault. There is nothing to do, and there are no jobs. And well, not let me.
Well,
not there are no jobs.
I know what you mean. You're not speaking
there's a
in
scarcity
there's a scarcity
of jobs. So I believe the onus is on our leaders to become more creative, to become more active in that process of attracting investors, whether locally or foreign, but we need more jobs. More people need to be working. With that alone, Tony, could transform St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You see it in other Caribbean islands. They have their challenges, so I'm not comparing on a whole scale level, but I strongly believe that the fundamental of any country, any economy doing well is your healthcare, education
and job creation.
And that we have some missing links in all three. Therefore, that would be the first one I would focus on, getting more people employed.
And let's hear your last piece of music.
Well, my last piece of music, I thought that since it's new, but it's fun, and it's an African song.
Right.
I don't know what half the words mean, but, but I love the rhythm. It makes me dance, and in researching it, it's about staying the straight and narrow path and trying not to be pulled into things that you shouldn't, that could get you in some trouble. So it's You Want to Bamba.
Well, I think I know that song as well, and I enjoy it. So, Shafia, it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
We'll have to have this conversation again, not about your profile, but about some current issues and some of the things that you started to get into in this discussion.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure. Let's go to our final break with Shafia's African selection, You Want a Bamba.
Okay. Chebe meka tamuwa. Sema tukina go drink.